Hello, this is Joshua for Frost Dragon Designs, and today I'd like to talk to you about my Industrial Robotics Cat hard enamel pin. This pin is part of my More Cats Doing Science collection. The More Cats Doing Science pin collection features more than 35 designs of cats doing science and science-adjacent activities. Now let's get into the design. Alright, so, robotics. What can I really say about robotics here? Okay, so I have loved sci-fi and that sort of stuff since I was a kid. My dad was a huge influence on that. He's always been a tinkerer. He was also sort of into sci-fi, not as much as I got into it, but, he watched Star Trek and that sort of thing. He was what would be considered a nerdy guy, but an awesome nerdy guy. And so robots, I've always had a fascination with them. I have a picture of a robot somewhere that I drew in kindergarten. And I drew this same robot over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know why. I had an army of robots hanging on the wall of my bedroom. And so when somebody said, hey, you should do a robotics cat, my first thought was, yes, I should do a robotics cat. But I wanted to make sure that I was keeping it in line with, functional robotics that might be being used today or being developed today. I went with being used today. What you see in this final pin design is an industrial robot arm with 6 points of articulation. This would be very common in a lot of industrial settings. It's fairly versatile. It has a great range of motion, and it just seems to be a good touch point for people who are both in the know of robotics and not in the know of robotics. It's pretty obvious that it's a robot arm. But since this is an industrial robot arm, I wanted to make sure I was considering safety as a visual aspect of the pin, just like I have many of the kitties wearing gloves and goggles and other PPE. Working around industrial robots can be very dangerous. There's an exclusion zone. It's an area where people are not allowed to be when the robot is functioning. There are usually safety glass in between you and the robot, which I tried doing for this design. I just really didn't like the way it looked visually, so I ended up doing something a little different. Instead of the full safety glass, in the end, we just have a barrier, and we just hope that the kitty doesn't jump over the barrier. And to my understanding, a lot of these robot arms are powered hydraulically, and I very briefly thought about having hydraulic lines on this robot arm to kind of show that. In the end, I removed those because the pin design was already getting very complicated from a production standpoint. There were already a lot of very small cutout type spaces in this design. And adding those hydraulic lines just would have made the pin that much more complicated to produce. Every time you have a cutout, that's an area that could cause a problem in production. That makes the mold more complicated, and just the general production and the cleaning of flashing from the molding process and all those sorts of things. It just complicates it every time you do that. So I chose not to have the hydraulic lines for that reason. Then after that, I went and removed the safety glass, which introduced all kinds of more complications with small cutout areas. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking sometimes. I do something for one reason, and then I do something else that goes completely against it. Another interesting thing about this one, the lab coat was almost a dark navy blue. I oftentimes, especially in settings where there's a lot of grease and other things like that, I'll see people wearing the blue colored lab coats. The purpose of the lab coat is to, protect you against splashes and that sort of thing. So in an industrial type setting, where you're going to have a lot of grease and dark colored things like that, a white lab coat doesn't make sense. Although I did end up switching back to the white lab coat just because it's a very classic look. But I did give the kitty a construction helmet, a safety helmet, so he's at least being somewhat more safe around this robot. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching me design this pin. I hope you've enjoyed hearing me talk about it a little bit. I really enjoy this one. I like the orange color. It's cool. Robots are cool. So anyway, if you've enjoyed watching this video and hearing me talk about what I was thinking about while designing it, please go ahead, like, and subscribe. I try to release 1 to 2 new videos a week, and I would love to have you along for the next one. So thank you again so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.